Alright, hello everybody, good morning. Um, Usually How To Wednesdays are on Wednesdays, not Thursdays, but I lost track of time yesterday, didn't get really much of anything done except for a new project that I'm working on, which I'm super excited about. I'll show you pictures probably towards the end of this video. Um, but as promised in the last video that we did for a how-to video at least, um, we are working on a mock-up today. Um, if you remember or even watched the last video, I am making a 1820s, 1830s working corset, essentially, for my friend Naomi. We are making it out of cotton and linen. So the mock-up that I'm making is going to be of cotton, and it is going to be the lining to this corset so that I can take it apart, use it as a pattern for the linen itself, and not have to cut out another 3 yards worth of material for something that I could do in 6 yards of material instead. So this is what we're doing. Um, I haven't drawn up the pattern yet. I have it blocked out, and I will show you all what my version of blocking out is on the graph paper we have here, or graph fabric, whatever you want to call this stuff. Um, and yeah, basically, in the last video I talked about what I do to make patterns, whether it's basing off of pictures or off a pattern itself. In this case, we are doing a really weird mixture of both, because if you remember, I drew up my mock-up here. This is the pattern that I'm going off of. Each square represents an inch, so I'm basically taking this that is on small graph paper and turning it into a very large version instead. With that, we also have the picture version, if you remember, that is this. So I'm doing a really weird mixture of both. The pattern itself is in this little packet that I've created, and found online, rather. And I'm kind of mixing a few different things, because I also have a book that I pulled some research from as well, called The History of Underclothes. So kind of mixing a little bit of everything together here, and hopefully coming out with a wearable pattern for Miss Naomi. Nice thing about making a mock-up first that will also be part of the garment itself, you already know for a fact that that garment, once you have tailored it to the person and or yourself, is going to fit. There is no second guessing it. You have an exact thing for you specifically. So that is what we are hoping for, and I am going to set the camera up a little bit differently. By the way, if you didn't see our last Fashion Friday video, welcome to my kind of sewing space. It is the basement, so I have like a really weird corner right here that is just my stuff. Lots of fabric everywhere. Try to keep it cleaned up, but it doesn't work very well. But this is where we're at, and I'm going to set the camera up different, and I'm going to show you all kind of how I draw out patterns like this at least. So, alright, so I went ahead and I cut out my blocking pieces. Obviously my blocking is quite literally just that. Basically how I do the blocking process here is take the highest point in your pattern, uh, whether it's on paper or the graph paper version here. I went from the highest point, which is the shoulder strap, down to the lowest one, which is actually the center front here, for the length of it. So that is it. This is absolutely how long it will be, from shoulder blade to just below the waistline. And then for the width of them, I again go from the widest point, which when it comes to corsets is usually your hip width. Um, so especially in the case of my front here, from this straight edge over to here is how wide I've made it. So I've basically made it so that you remember as kids in those coloring books, you have the drawing charts that are nothing but grids, and you have to draw everything within that square, and then you do the next square, and you do the next one. That's basically what I'm doing here. Um, just slightly easier because these are measurements. So from here, I know that this is going to be my front. This is going to be the center front of my garment. So I'm going to go ahead and do a tailor's mark of doing it on the fold here. Um, and then from here you can go with measuring out your longest distances. So in the case of from the bottom of the garment up, I go up 3 inches. I'm going to mark. That is the lower hip. The waistline is then another 3 inches up from that. And you continue the whole process that way. That way you know exactly where you want it to be. Once I actually start drawing it out, I'll also go in and count width-wise rather than the height of it. So for my waistline, I need to go in 8. That is where my waistline cut will be. So when I draw it, it'll go up and over. And that's basically how I do the blocking process. Now originally, in original patterns, that would have been all you've got is some little marks, something akin to this. Where you might have points like the parentheses I made here, and that's where you would want to put your folds. You might have arrows like this, where that's where your grain line is. And then you're going to have really weird little ones like this, or small circles for where eyelets are going, things like that. So we've actually kind of got it easy today in comparison to the patterns they were using then. Alright, so now you can kind of see that we have the pattern of a corset. Because I've done corsets before, I know the general shape of what it's supposed to be. Looks ever so slightly different than what is on my paper here, but that's okay. That is why this is a mock-up. This is something that I can take and I can change and I can fix. So, from here, because I've done it all in red, I want to go back and I'll trace over it later with black. I try to make a distinction between my tailor's markings and the pattern itself by color coordinating it. That way I don't have to finagle it quite so much. And one thing I have forgotten already is an eyelet that goes right there. Um, so I'm going to now do that for all of my pieces. You can kind of see where I went through earlier. This is the shoulder strap. It's fairly simple. But I'm going to finish drawing up the back and the gusset for it and cut it out. And then we're going to start making the actual mock-up rather than just the pattern. So I have basically half the corset sitting in front of me now, which means I am ready to move to making the mock-up. I'm using a fairly light cotton, mainly because this is a working dress. Or not a working dress, a working corset. It is a ruled corset. Um, so I want it to be breathable but not breathable but durable. There's the words. Um, and basically making your mock-up is exactly like making your final product. You were taking your pattern, you were cutting out your fabric, sewing it together, and then trying it on. It is the trying on process that I won't be able to show you all. Um, I might could later on a different project, but basically, try it on, make sure it fits properly. If there are certain spots that need to be widened, you mark them with some tailor's chalk or a pencil. Um, if it needs to be shrunk a little, you can pin it down with safety pins or your regular uh, pins. Um, and yeah, basically that's making your mock-up. Um, so at least through this part of the process, this is as far as you're going to see this corset for a while now. Because from here on, it is making sure it fits, taking it apart, cutting out the actual material, and then we might start talking again. Because once we start adding the actual material into the mix, um, I'm going to be figuring out cording and how to properly cord a corset because I've done bonnets, I've done petticoats, never done a corset before. This will be an experience. So yeah, that's basically it. Side note, if you all are interested, I haven't finished my half morning yet, but I have a few that work for it nonetheless. And tomorrow on Facebook Live, we will be going over, kind of recapping full morning and those stages, what the good death is, because I didn't cover that part very well, and then talking about half morning and the stages that in itself has, as well as what was expected of women within that stage of mourning. Uh, there's a lot more than most people think. There was definitely a lot more than I thought. But yeah, that'll be tomorrow at, I believe, 8, 7 or 8 o'clock, somewhere in there. Um, there is an event posted online, so you all can go see that. But yeah, basically it. I will see you all next time.